Welcome to Lesson E. This lesson is all about audio. We're going to go over this topic in general terms. With the advent of software editing, what has happened is that several job descriptions have been collided into one. And the editor today is expected to know how to mix audio as well as know how to color correct when in the past, as well as know how to create motion design, when in the past these were all separate jobs done by separate specialists. And to that effect, I would have to say that a proper audio mixer or audio engineer, mixing engineer, producer, mastering engineer, these are all very specific, high quality professions that demand a lot of training and a lot of learning. And so I would say that for an editor to be expected to be as good a audio producer as a trained audio engineer is a little bit unfair. And so I would say simply that even though in software programs like Adobe Premiere, there are options to mix your audio, there are options to sweeten your audio, what they call sweeten audio, which is to make the audio a little bit cleaner. I would say that these tools they're probably not at the high-end quality that a professional audio producer mix engineer would be using. An audio mix engineer would be using very dedicated, specialized, expensive tools to obtain a quality sound. What we have within Adobe Premiere are some basic tools that will get us close, but don't expect to achieve a perfect sound. So with this said, we are going to explore the tools that are available inside Adobe Premiere Pro, but I just wanted to make this caveat that do not expect to become a advanced level audio professional producer, audio engineer, and mixer simply using the tools within Adobe Premiere Pro. These tools really are to be used when this is the only option. In other words, you are being asked to do the audio mix and a higher budget type of setting. The audio mix is going to be done separately by a professional. So I would say, with that in mind, learn these tools, use them to your advantage, and get to know what they do. But the topic of audio is a broad topic, and we're really just going to be scratching the surface here. And I will be illustrating the tools that Adobe Premiere Pro makes available to us in broad strokes. So Lesson E, here we go. This is going to cover Lesson 10 and Lesson 11 in the book. So let's open Lesson 10. So my Lesson 10 opens up in the Full with Effects window, which is okay for now. I'll leave it at that. I might change it later, but this is my layout, the layout that I use. I always try to maximize my timeline. I do not have like to have a bunch of stuff down here in the lower left-hand corner. I tend to put my project and my effects control window up here. And what we're going to look at today are several ways to mix your audio inside your edit. Now remember, your edit is what's in the sequence. This is called an edit. So within your edit, down here we have Theft Unexpected is our edit.
Is this seat taken?
You can see there's audio, which is what's popping up in the Vue Meters. It's sparse. There's not a whole lot of audio. We don't have a music track on here, for example. But let's go see if I can find a sequence that's got better music on it. Perhaps the Desert Montage, yes. Desert Montage has a music track on it. So you can see that we have music playing here. And there are ways to impact this mix inside your edit. So I'm going to show you the 3 basic ways. So the first way is this. Fairly straightforward. I'm going to, actually, I'm going to go to Beau's layout real quick, just to get rid of that panel on the right. And also to show you that you can extend, right here, if you extend out your Vue meters, these are your audio Vue meters, what happens is that they now start playing horizontally instead of vertically. These 2 Vue meters correspond to your 2 stereo channels. I'm not going to talk about 5.1 surround sound in this lesson. I'm going to keep it to mono and stereo mixing, because 99% of the time that's what you're going to be doing. If you're doing 5.1 surround sound, clearly you should be working with an audio engineer and not attempting to do this inside Premiere Pro. So we're going to be dealing with stereo channels. Stereo, the way stereo presents itself is 2 channels. The one on the top is the left channel, channel 1. The one on the bottom is the right channel, channel 2. Stereo is basically 2 mono channels stacked on top of each other. And typically, what to watch out for with a stereo mix is you have not only the levels of each channel, which don't necessarily always correspond to each other at the same time, but you also have the positioning, which is called the pan. Think of it as a fan. As you're opening a fan, a Japanese fan, that's sort of your stereo pan. You can put things on the right, you can put things on the left. The channel 1 is the left channel, channel 2 is the right channel, and as you're playing these back, you have this little S right here that you can click, and the S stands for solo, which means that only the left channel is playing right now. If I turn on the right channel, only the right channel is playing right now, or being monitored. A little word about what's happening in these Vue meters. If you right-click on the little, you see how the little scale is here? It goes from, it says dB, it goes -21 up to 0. You can change that range to 120 dB, it goes all the way down. I like to make it 24 dB is all I need, because I'm not going to go much further down. The lower you go to the left, the quieter the sound. A dB scale stops at 0. 0 is the maximum volume gain that you want. Anything above 0 is going to distort. So if I hit reset indicators, you notice these yellow lines got put back at the beginning. Now, I have 2 options here. I have dynamic peaks and static peaks. If I turn on dynamic peaks, I'm going to just put on my loop playback here. If I turn on dynamic peaks, what happens is that these little yellow bars, which are the peaks, what they'll do is they'll stay on for a little while, a couple of seconds, and then they'll fade away. You see how they fade away? And that's just to show you what the peak level was. If I go to static peaks instead, they'll stay. They will not fade away, and it will only show you what the highest peak at any particular time was. So right now, my highest peak is hitting at -3, which is pretty loud, actually. Now it's hitting even higher. You see? So that's too loud. I would actually tone this audio down. Okay, so there are 3 ways to mix this audio inside the timeline and then inside the project panel. So in the timeline, I'm going to make this bigger just so we can see better. Now I made this bigger, so now my Vue meters are both vertical. It doesn't matter, whichever you prefer. So, but anyway, there is a little, what Adobe calls the rubber band in this book, the Adobe classroom book. I don't like that. I don't like that name because that's not what I refer to as a rubber band. To me, this is the keyframe automation line. But in any case, you can hover with your V tool selected. You can hover over that keyframe automation line, and you can drag it down. You see how I've lowered my levels by doing that? Also, I could boost it all the way up. And if I play back now my levels are smashing the top. You see? And that means it's way too loud. So you have the option to adjust your levels using this keyframe automation line here. Now, notice there are dots in this keyframe automation line. These are keyframes. You can right-click on the keyframes and you can turn on your Bezier curves if you want to smooth them out, just like in the effects control panel. And you can wiggle them around. This is why they call this a rubber band as well. I say I would rather call this the keyframe automation line and leave it at that. You can put more keyframes on this line by holding your control button and clicking. You see I've added more keyframes here. So now my audio, if I play, it's gonna reduce, and then it's gonna come back up. So I've created these fades in a way. Now you can also insert keyframes using your pen tool, which is right here. I can also add more keyframes with my pen tool. Also with my pen tool, I can grab all the keyframes by doing a marquee, grab, and if I use my bracket keys, bracket up or bracket down, I can adjust all the keyframes at once, dynamically, as the track is playing. If I do shift bracket, I can adjust them by, I believe it's 3 dBs all at once. So those are two ways to quickly get to mixing your tracks inside the timeline. There are two other ways to affect the mix inside your edit. In your project lesson panel on the upper left-hand side of the screen, go to your window drop-down menu and select the audio clip mixer and then the audio track mixer. I have my Theft Unexpected sequence loaded, and you can see that there's some audio playing. It bounces in and bounces out, but that's because different clips have different audio on them. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to hit home. I'm going to hit select my timeline, hit home, and inside my project I'm going to go get some music. Let me double click on Ambient Heavens. Now notice when I double click on an audio clip that does not have any video, the video icon stays grayed out. The audio icon is available. That's my audio drag icon. I could drag it down into the timeline if I wanted. As the clip plays, my playhead scrubs through the audio waveform. That's what this is. If I stop it and I hit plus, I can zoom into my audio waveform all the way to this grayed out area, which represents one single frame of video. If I do a right arrow, it will advance one frame at a time, or a back arrow, it will advance one video frame at a time. Now, that's useful in terms of video editing, but what if I wanted to make a more specific type of audio edit? Say I needed to start right at the beginning of a song or something. Sometimes one frame, remember one frame, if you're in 24 frames per second, that's only 1/24th of a frame. Audio is sampled for digital purposes at typically 48,000 times per second. So while video, for all intents and purposes, is sampled here at 24 frames per second, that is, you have 24 discrete images per each second, audio, the audio track is going to have 48,000 discrete pieces of audio per second. So if you want to look at that more specifically, you can right-click on your, you can click on your little monkey wrench and go Show Audio Time Units. And now, if I zoom in, if I continue to do pluses, you can see how I'm zooming in all the way to where I'm actually looking at one sample unit of audio. And each one sample unit of audio is a tiny, tiny piece of audio. So I can cut my audio at the sample level right here. Now, that's very specific. It also tells you which sample that is. Second 24 samples, 5,385, for example. That's very, very specific. But I'm going to put it back onto normal video time frames because that's a little bit splitting hairs there, but it's available to you if you need it. But let's go ahead and hit home here in my source panel. And down here in my timeline, make sure A1 is connected to track A1, and I'm just hit overwrite. And that's going to drop my clip into the timeline. If I hit my backslash, I can see that I have way too much clip here, so I'm going to drag it back to match this length here. And now if I hit home and play, you can see I've got some music as well as some dialogue. Now, actually, I made a mistake here and I wrote on top of my dialogue, so I got rid of my dialogue. That's not what I wanted to do. So I'm going to undo this, do 2 undos, and instead I'm going to patch my track A1 into my audio track A2, which is what I intended to do at the beginning. Made a mistake. So now, if I have my backslash home and I play it back, I'm going to have my music and my dialogue play at the same time, which is what I wanted to do. All right. Now we saw how we could introduce keyframes inside the timeline. Now we're going to go get our audio track mixer here, and as I play back, watch what happens to the different tracks. You have the track on the far right, which is the master mix. That is your overall mix. I'm gonna put the loop playback on here. Your overall master mix just gives you the overall levels of your final mix.
Is this seat taken?
Over here, I have my 3 tracks, audio 3 or A3, A2, and A1. Notice A1 has the dialogue, and A2 has the music. I can actually give them names and click here and call this one music.
Excuse me.
And call this one dialogue if I want.
Is this seat taken?
Just for the purposes of seeing what I'm doing if I'm mixing here. Now, if I go here and I'm going to go back to my beginning and play it back, and let's say the music is a little bit overpowering to the dialogue, well, I could take my fader here and drag my music down. So now my music's not too loud anymore. Now I'm going to make these tracks a little bit bigger, a little bit taller,
Excuse
so
me.
we can see what's happening. Not
Is
too
this seat
tall,
taken?
because I want to still be able to see my mixer up here. This is always a struggle between the real estate. That's why editing with several monitors is helpful. But anyway,
Excuse me.
keep an eye on this automation line as I
Is this seat
move
taken?
the fader here of my music track. Notice nothing happens to that automation line. However, I do know that my volume is being reduced. And what's
me.
happening is that I'm actually reducing the overall volume
Is
of
this
this
seat taken?
track, but not the volume inside this clip. Now, if I wanted to reduce the volume inside this clip, I would need to go get my audio clip mixer. Now you can see in my audio clip mixer, I have the names have
Excuse
been
me.
retained. I have music
Is
in
this seat
track
taken?
A2 and dialogue in track A1. If I lower my music here, it's lowered the levels, but it hasn't done anything to this automation keyframe line yet. But if I
me.
activate this keyframe record button, this little blue button
this seat
here,
taken?
now if I move this up and down as it plays back, now I stop it. Notice what happens. It writes in keyframes. As I move the fader up and down, new keyframes get written. That is because I'm in my audio clip mixer. The audio clip mixer allows me to mix the audio inside a clip. Now, note I have this little mix here. I'm going to just mark this into out so we can focus on this little segment. And my fader, now look at my fader here, it's been automated. That's why I call these keyframe automation lines. You see my fader now? It's actually moving by itself. That's because I've recorded fader keyframes. Now, if I go back to my audio track mixer, I can lower this all the way down to -25, and now I won't hear these fades anymore. If I boost up my dialogue, I can still hear the dialogue, or just the ambient sound, really. There's not much dialogue there. Let me extend my out point so I can hear the dialogue over here when he clinks the cup. So you can hear the clink of the cup. That's very loud, as a matter of fact. And we'll lower that down. But notice that my music track is turned way down. That's because in my audio track mixer, I've got it turned way down. But now, if I boost my music track, I can boost my music track way, way up. Way up, in fact, if I want. And even though I still have my audio keyframe automations here, the overall level of the track has been boosted. So you see, these are two different ways to impact what's happening in your timeline. So just to reiterate, your audio clip mixer, you can see the fader animate here, mixes the audio inside a clip. Now I could also mix the audio inside this mid-John clip. If I'll turn off the keyframes here, I'll turn on the keyframes here, and I'll do the same thing here. Notice I recorded some keyframes inside this clip as well, and they get recorded dynamically. But the audio track mixer mixes the overall level of an entire track. Okay, so those are the three ways to change your levels inside your tracks. Now we're going to look at some other ways to sweeten the sound, that is, to apply effects to the audio tracks to try to get a better sound. So if you notice inside the sequence where we put our keyframes, we have these little graphs. There's a green one here, and this is a white one over blue in this one, that correspond to what is called waveforms. Now, if I double click on this mid-John clip and load it into the source panel, I have two options. I can view the video signal, or I can view the audio signal. Now, it's convenient to view an audio signal, in particular here. Say we have the clink of this cup here, which might or might not be jarring. Let's say if we want to edit that out, well, we can zoom in here and we can see very specifically where that clink happens. And we can decide to cut that out if we want. Say put an out point before that clink happens. Now, over here on the right-hand side of my source monitor, I can also grab a slider here. It's very hard to see, but there's a slider here, and I can make my audio waveforms appear thicker so that I can see them better. In particular for this clip, it's very useful because the audio is very, very low on this clip. So if I really wanted to see my clink of the teacup right here, now I can see it better. So you've got little sliders here that you can adjust up or down. That does not change the volume of the audio, by the way. This is just changing the display graph. Now we also have these, I'll zoom in here, waveforms inside the timeline monitor as well. Now notice my waveforms are in the middle of the clip here. Well, you can change that. If you click on the hamburger icon here and you select rectified audio waveforms, what it does, it puts the waveform down on the bottom of the clip here instead. Notice here's the clink. This doesn't change anything about the sound. These are just visual cues for you to, for example, let's say I want to get rid of this clink. I can grab these keyframes I've put here and I'll just drag this keyframe down here, keep this one here. With my pen tool, put another keyframe here and drag this keyframe back up. And you can see that now I lowered the level of this clink so you no longer hear this clink. Again, keyframe automation that I introduced manually using my pen tool. I'll go back to my V tool. So I was using my visual cues here to show me where I could make this little audio edit. And using your hamburger icon, you can change how this is displayed. You can turn off the color for the audio clip. Audio waveforms use the label color, or if you just want them all to be green, leave it like that. You could turn off rectified, and that would put the, it's a little bit better because you can see the stereo signal here, and it puts the waveform in the middle of the clip. Logarithmic waveform scaling just is a different way to view it, which I prefer rather than linear. It gives you a little bit more information, so I usually keep that on. And time ruler numbers, which is just basically your normal timeline sequence time code display. Now briefly, I just want to explain a little bit about how audio works. Obviously, audio comes to us through our ears, mostly, not entirely, but mostly, and is a response to a difference in air pressure, believe it or not. That's why they say there's no sound in space, because there's no air pressure in space. So the air pressure impacts your eardrums, and that's how you hear audio. All right. That's how we're able to use little earbuds, because these little earbuds create air pressure inside these little chambers that impact our eardrums, which then send the signal to our brains that audio is coming in. Now we have two ears, and therefore we naturally hear in stereo, and that is to allow us to audio locate where something is coming from. Say a car, whether a car is coming from behind or from in front of us. Without being able to see it, we can hear it, and that's because the difference between our left and our right ears tells our brain where things are located, which is really what the function of stereo listening is for. Now, we've been able to reproduce that mechanically with stereo recording, which is essentially done by having two mics sort of set up to mimic the way we hear, which is kind of the same thing with stereo vision, where we in fact have two cameras or two lenses that replicate our two eyes, which are also created to allow us to see in 3 dimensions, so we can see whether things are close or far away, and know that by looking at them with our two eyes with what is called parallax. The parallax is the different angle between the left eye and the right eye. So, and since you have an audio parallax that happens between your left ear and your right ear. This is why audio nowadays is recorded in stereo, because it gives us a more high fidelity response. And of course, since then, since that was created back in the 40s and 50s, we now have many more versions of it, 5.1 surround sound, and even 8 point something surround sound. You know, it goes on, where you have speakers that completely surround you, and you feel like you have sound that's swirling around the room. The characteristics mainly of sound are measured in Hertz, and Hertz is a measurement of the frequency of the sound wave. That is, how many times per second that wave hits your eardrums. The human ear typically hears between 20 hertz and 20,000 hertz, or 20 hertz and 20 kilohertz. A kilohertz is 1,000 hertz. So 20 hertz is a very, very low bass muffled sound, and 20,000 hertz is a very high pitched tinny sound, something like a mosquito or something. But of course, not everybody can hear. That's quite a wide range. So our typical hearing is somewhere in between 60 to 15,000 hertz, typically. And each person differs. So what that means for audio mixing is that audio mixing wise, anything that is on the low end, that is between, say, 60 hertz to 1,000 hertz, It's a logarithmic scale. It goes up logarithmically, by the way. The higher frequencies sort of accelerate faster, if you want to look at it that way. Anything below 1,000 hertz is going to be considered more low end. Anything above 1,000 hertz, say between 500 hertz and 4,000 hertz, is going to be considered mid-range, and that's typically where the human voice is. So our ears are very tuned to hear human voices. So we're very well attuned to the mid-range, which is, say, between 1,000 and 5,000 hertz. Anything above 1,000 hertz is called the high end. So when you do equalizing, which is basically taking frequencies and adjusting them, what you're doing is you're adjusting the relative level of the different frequencies, frequency bands inside that audio spectrum. So what you want to keep in mind is typically you want to make the mid-range. It's better to just break it up into 3 ranges: the low end, the mid-range, and the high range, the high end. You want to keep the mid-range at a nice, clean, steady level. And the high end, what the high end will do, if you increase the high end, it tends to make things sound closer. And if you increase the low end, it tends to make things sound more muddy, that is, less distinguishable. So it's not a good idea to increase the low end. And if you increase the high end too much, you'll also get what is called sibilance, which is you'll get a lot of and a lot of noise. So you want to really be careful with the low end and the high end. And the mids, you want to try to keep the mids really clean. Now, audio levels are measured in decibels. Without getting into what that means, strangely enough, the maximum decibel level is 0. So you're going to be working at a level below 0. And typically for video, what you want is you want your levels to be between -12 and -6 right here in the Vue meter. If you right click on this ruler, you have different settings for your Vue meter. I would say if you leave it on 60 dB, that should give you a nice range. And the only 2 other options I would look at is whether or not to have dynamic peaks, whereby the peaks will update and they'll stay but then they'll disappear, or to have static peaks, whereby the highest peak will be registered and will stay until a higher peak comes along. I like static peaks because it tells me exactly where my highest peak is, and right here I want it to be exactly between -12 and -6, so I'm in a good spot right here with my audio. One thing you want to consider when filming video is to make sure that you record room tone, and room tone is something you want to record once everything is set up in the space that you're shooting in. Of course, if it's outside, same thing. You just want to grab some raw footage that contains the sound of that environment. And you're going to need that when editing, because at times you will have like blank spots that you will need to fill in with room tone. So when you're recording video, you want to make sure that you tell the cameraman to grab room tone, and a minute room tone is usually enough, but you want to make sure that you grab it with all the gear set up and all the actors in the room, but everyone keeping quiet, of course, so that room tone will match the same audio floor as when you're shooting. Now, audio floor points to something which is the noise that is inherent into any audio that you capture. And so the noise floor, or the audio floor, what I just referred to, is something that you're always going to have to deal with. And in your effects control panel, your effects panel, you have obviously in audio effects, you have filter and EQ, and then you also have noise reduction, where you have a denoiser. That has to do with how to get rid of, if I put the denoise on this clip and I go to take a look at it, it'll show me this graph that if I play it back, it'll show me the noise inherent in this clip. Let me select a larger space here. And this filter will allow you to filter out the noise in a clip. We'll see this a little bit later, but this is where you can get rid of that background noise, or your noise floor. Your noise floor is always going to be there, but what you want to do is learn to manage it. And if you get room tone, remember one thing about audio is that audio is contextual. Music, speech, everything is contextual. So it depends on the environment that you're in. It's remarkable that, for example, even if you're in a crowd, if someone you know shouts out your name, you'll recognize that voice. And that's because audio is contextual. Your brain learns how to filter out noise that it considers, audio that it considers noise, and audio that it considers important. So when you're shooting, you need to get that that room tone. And when you're adjusting your mix in the audio, you need to adjust your overall mix in relation to the different things that are happening in the overall environment. We're going to look at a feature real quick that's included with Adobe Premiere and your Creative Cloud account. Let's go ahead into the project window and grab the drone flight sequence. Go ahead and open that. I'll hit a /home and play it. It's just essentially these desert scenes. And what I want to do is I want to get a piece of background music for this. Now, if you go into your essential sound panel here in the effects panel over here, you can find it by going to your window drop-down menu. The essential sound will have two tabs. One is edit, we'll see that one later. The other one is browse. And inside browse, you can preview some audio tracks. Now, you can preview these audio tracks live along with your sequence. And that is by activating this button right here, Timeline Sync. When enabled, audio previews will play in sync with your timeline from the point where you place the playhead. So my playhead is here. I can listen to a different track. 80 synth pop, I don't know. And it's going to play. I did notice a jump on the playhead there, not sure why, but anyway, it is going to play the track for you without having to load the track. You can just preview these tracks inside the Essential Sound Adobe stock panel. Now let's say we want classical. There we go, there's classical. So you can search with the search bar. You can look at moods, angry, atmospheric. If I want atmospheric, for example, cloudy days. And these typically are free to use up to a point. If you click on the three dots here, it tells you more about the artist, about the album, etc., etc. And then you could add it to your project. And I'm not sure where that got loaded in. It's in your stock audio media. There you go, Cloudy Days, right there. And you could listen to it in your source monitor. And you could decide then to drop it down onto your sequence. Go home, make sure A1 track is selected and drop the audio in. Or better yet, I'm going to go to the end of my sequence and put an O point there. That marks the end of my sequence as an out point. And now when I do my overwrite, it's going to stop the audio at my out point. So now I have my audio bed. Now, if I were looking at this in terms of mixing, my audio is a bit hot up here, so I would go into my track mixer, for example, and take this down a little bit. So that now, by the way, with static peaks selected, if you click once inside the Vue meter, the static peaks will reset. Now it's hitting between -12 and -6. Still a little bit hot, but I would leave it there. I'd probably add a compressor to this just to make sure I kind of crush those peaks a little bit. But there you go. I would just be careful when using Adobe stock. You want to make sure that you have the rights to use it. So that's something you have to check inside your cloud. When you bring it into your project, it loads it up into your cloud account. And I would check in your cloud account whether or not you have the right to use it commercially or on the web, etc. So it's got a limited range of use. I would say sometimes these tracks are actually registered with a PRO, which is a music publishing registry, which means that if you use them in a YouTube video, for example, your video might get demonetized, or you might have to share your monetization with the publishers of these tunes. These are things that start to happen once you use audio that does not belong to you. So be aware of that. Now, I said that there were 3 ways to actually adjust the audio levels. One in the timeline and one using audio track mixer, the other one using audio clip mixer. There's yet another way. If you select your audio 1 clip here and go to effects control, and you open up channel volume, you also have volume controls for both the left and the right channel. If you open up the volume effects tab, you have an overall level control. Let's say if I lower this, if I lower it by 6 dB, note what happens to, I also did not mean to introduce a keyframe, but if I lower it by 3 dB, well, let me turn off this keyframe stopwatch first of all. And if I lower this by 5 dB, notice that the automation time, keyframe automation line went down. If I do it -27, it goes way down. If I play it back, the music is very, very, very quiet now. So here's yet another way where you can automate the levels of your music, and also, of course, you can add keyframes, which is what, if you turn on the keyframe level here, you can say add a keyframe here, add a higher keyframe here, and then go to the end. Remember always to come back one. Go -12 here, and then come back a little bit here. You go -6 here. And now, if you look in your timeline, you have a keyframe animation for your automation. So you have a fade up at the beginning, and at the end you have a fade down. Yet another way to control your audio levels in the project panel, in the effects control panel. Another way to adjust the levels inside your timeline or inside your clip is to select a clip, right click on it, and select audio gain. Now what this allows you to do, it allows you to raise the level. Gain is a audio term which means to boost the level. So if you raise the audio level by, say, 1 dB here, remember my audio level, I set this audio level to -6. If I raise it by 2 dBs, adjust by 2 dBs, it should lift everything. You notice what it did is it amplified the audio waveform. So now my peaks are going to be a little bit higher than what they were prior. So if I undo it, see how my waveforms got smaller? And I play it back, let's see where my peaks are hitting. My peaks are hitting about minus, oh there you go, right about here, which is minus 15 maybe. Okay, so let's adjust the gain. I'll go ahead and hit audio gain, adjust the gain up 2 decibels. You see how it amplified my waveform there. Remember, my peak was right about here at, we'll put my arrow right there. Let's play it back now and see where that peak hits now. See, it hit there. It hit 2 decibels higher at about minus 12 or minus 13. So I raised the overall gain up within this entire clip. Notice it will also respect my automation here. So I will still have the fade in, the fade out, but everything will be a little bit louder. That's gain adjustment. Now you can also set the gain to a specific level. Let's set the gain to 2 and play it back. And you see the level is much higher now. It's actually hitting -6 right now. So now the original song is much higher. You can see the original song, and I'm just playing it inside my source monitor, is almost hitting up to 0. And what that means is my track mixer right here on A1 has been brought down. You can see I brought my track mixer down to -4. But if I adjust this track mixer back up to 0, now you're going to see my levels are way up here again. So keep in mind all the different areas where you can raise and lower the levels of your track. So let's look, that was gain. Gain boosts the level of your overall track, of your overall clip, I should say. Let's look at normalization now. In your project panel, go look for Journey to New York. Double click on that.
I was searching for something.
And we'll play this back, and the levels are kind of all over the place here.
Suffice to say,
there's high levels, there's low levels.
I would know when I saw it.
So what we want to do is we want to tame these levels. what I'm going to do is I'm going to go grab my Select All tool, which is A, and I'm going to hit Shift as I select all the clips in this track. And now I'm going to select my V tool. I'm going to right click here and I'll go back to audio gain, but this time I'm going to select Normalize all peaks to -8 dB and click OK. It's going to adjust all these clips
I was searching for something.
so that the peaks
I couldn't say what it was.
never go any higher than
but
-8.
suffice to say, I would know when I saw it.
You can see these are
I
hitting
wanted to go to New York,
-6.
but all that construction,
These are hitting -6.
then-
This one's a little bit louder.
all of a sudden, it found me.
Now, of course, we also have the music in the background. If we wanted to only just check the dialogue, we could solo this track
I was
by
searching for
hitting
something.
S. And now we can look
I
at
couldn't say what it
only
was,
the dialogue. Notice that in
but suffice
between
to say,
the dialogue clips, there's
I
this
would know when
empty
I saw it.
space. Well, typically you'd
wanted
want
to
to
go
put
to New
room
York,
tone
but
in there.
all that construction,
And room tone can be outside noise
And
as
then
well.
all of a
And that would
sudden,
make for a better mix.
it found me.
Here, I think the music is going to take the place of that. All the peaks in every single clip reach approximately the same level. So Premiere Pro is looking for the highest peak in each one of these clips and then adjusting the gain so that the highest peak does not pass beyond that normalization amount that you specify. Notice on this edit, we've got 2 tracks of audio here. We've got the dialogue and we've got the music. So when you're
I
in a
was searching
situation
for
like
something.
this, you want to mix the two
I couldn't say what it was, but
so that,
Suffice
for
to say,
example,
I would know when I saw it.
when the
I wanted to go to New
dialogue
York,
kicks
but
in, the
all
music
that construction,
recedes a little bit. And that is called ducking. And ducking is something you find in the Edit tab over here of the Essential Sound. And it's going to introduce us into these editing options that are available to us inside Essential Sound. So you've got 4 options here: dialogue, music, sound effects, and ambience. Ambience is what I guess they call room tone. That's what I would say that ambience is. Sound effects and music and dialogue, pretty self-explanatory. Okay, so what you need to do before you start editing here is to select the clip that you want to edit. In this case, we're going to select the music clip, which is on track audio 2. And then we're going to select an option. We're going to select the music option. We need to select all the dialogue clips again in track A1. So in order to select all the clips in track A1, I select A, which is my Select All tool, and hold the Shift button down. That allows me to select all these clips on track A1. And then I assign them as dialogue by clicking on here. Now I'm not going to do anything to them just yet, but I am going to go back and click on I'm going to select my V tool, click on my music track, and now in my music track, I'm going to go to the ducking drop-down panel here, turn it on, and I'm going to say duck against this, which is duck against dialogue. So since I've assigned everything on track A1 as my dialogue, and I've assigned what's on track A2 as my music on track A2 is going to duck against the dialogue on track A1. So now I'm going to hit Generate Keyframes, You can see it's calculating. Watch what happens on the clip down here once it's done. Now it's done, and you can see, if I zoom in a little bit, I have fades that have been automated on my music track. If I play this clip down now again.
I couldn't say what it was, but suffice to say,
you can hear the music fading up
I would know when I saw
and
it.
fading down in between the dialogue. Now you've got a couple of different options here. The duck amount is how many dBs you're going to lower that volume by. Minus 18 is probably a lot. I would say maybe minus 10. And the duration, that's in milliseconds. I would say probably 200 milliseconds would be a good place to go. And the sensitivity basically is how much it fades by. So I would bring this back to 4.3, let's say. And let's generate a new set of keyframes. As you can see, it will dynamically update the set of keyframes to your new settings. And now if I play it,
I wanted to go to New York, but all that construction, and then all of a sudden it found me.
I've got a much better mix now. And that was simply by using ducking, which allowed me to lower the level of the music against the dialogue here. We're going to look at another thing, which is called retiming. And this can be useful. I would say it's a little bit of a heavy-handed approach. These types of things will get better with AI, but let's go ahead and open the drone flight sequence again. Let's delete the music clip that we dropped in earlier just by selecting it, hit delete. And in the music bin up here in the project panel, we're going to grab graceful tenor. No, ambient heavens. All right. If I do a couple of minuses, there is my track. We're going to go ahead and select the timeline, hit home, make sure I'm going to shrink all my tracks so that I can see them. Make sure that A1 is patched to A1, and I'm going to hit overwrite. That's simply going to drop, and I'm going to hit a backslash. That's simply going to drop that music track on audio track A1. Now the track is too long. We saw that before as well. So instead of just doing an extend edit or chopping that off with the blade, we want to try to keep the sense of the overall song. So we wanted to have a beginning, middle, and end. So we're going to try this tool. Go into your ripple menu, right click, and drop down to where it says remix. Select the remix tool. Make sure that snapping's turned on, and you'll see why in a second. And hover over the, I'll just make this track a little bit taller. Hover over the end of that clip, select it, and drag it back so that it matches the length of your sequence here. And now you can see it's doing a clip analysis. And now the clip analysis is finished. What it's done is right in here, you can see, I'll zoom in a little bit. It's remixed this area of the clip. So what you've got is this now. So your fade out actually works with the end of the song. So what it did is, using AI, it kind of figured out where was a good place to mix this and shorten this track, and it did it shortened it right here, and it preserves the basic overall feeling of the track. So it's not jarring. It's actually, in this type of situation, it works well. But this is an ambient track, so it's not so bad. Let's delete this song. Hit my V tool, select it, hit delete, hit backspace. Let's go back into my project lesson and grab Ghost Reverie. Select my timeline, hit home, and I'm going to hit overwrite here. And now you can see that this song is too short. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to grab our remix tool, grab the last part of this clip, drag it out to match the length of this sequence. Now it's doing a clip analysis. Lo and behold, it's extended our clip and it's remixed this part in here. You can see it just basically repeated this same area twice, but it matched in the beat and it matched in the tonality and the sample rate. So this is a good way to get at a result that's fairly decent without having to try to go in there and splice it by hand. So we notice that the remix clip does not exactly reach the end of the sequence here. So if you go here into the Essential Sound panel, you can try to adjust the length here by dragging. But you might notice that it either goes too far or it doesn't go far enough. If you select stretch, now with stretch you have a little bit more control over the length and you can shrink it down to make it match better. And that's in your Essential Sound panel under Duration. All right, we're going to go back to the Theft Unexpected sequence. I'm going to hit my backslash. I'm going to delete the music track underneath here. I'm also going to double click on this clip, which is going to the last clip where I put all this automation in, which is going to load it into my source panel. I'm going to hit Effects Controls, and I'm going to turn off in my Volume tab, I'm going to turn off the Level Stopwatch. That's going to delete all the existing keyframes. Yes, that's the result I want, and I'm going to reset it to 0. I'm going to hit Shift Control A, Shift Control X, Home, and I'm back at the beginning of my sequence, and the sequence has been reset to its original levels. Now we're going to look at two things which are called a J cut and an L cut. I'm sure you've heard of those terms. They're called split edits, and what they refer to is that you're splitting the edit between the audio and the video. In other words, the audio is being edited in a different place from the video. So we're going to go to the last edit of this sequence by doing a couple of down arrows. And I'm going to do a Shift K to roll through this edit. Remember, Shift K is going to roll through my edit continuously until I turn it off. So I'm going to hit spacebar to stop it, and it stops my playhead exactly on the edit. We're going to go select the Rolling Edit tool, which is in the same drop-down menu as the Remix tool and the Ripple Edit tool. We're going to select Rolling Edit. If we hover over the edit, it shows us the Roll Edit option. But instead of rolling, if I click here and I try to roll it, you'll see that I roll both the video and the audio at the same time. I'm going to undo that because that's not what I want to do. I'm going to use Shift Control A to deselect the edit. I'm going to hit Alt or Option on a Mac. And I'm going to click on the edit now, which allows me to grab only the audio portion of this edit. And I'm going to drag the audio portion to the left. And now if I zoom in here, you can see I've got this shape where the audio cuts before the video. And if I highlight it, you can see this clip arrangement kind of has like a J shape. That is a J cut. The audio cuts before the video cuts in. If I do a Shift K, play around the edit, you can see the audio edit happens first and then the video edit happens. This is called leading by audio. In other words, we cut into the audio of the next clip before introducing the next clip. So it's a good way to lead your audience. Let's do an L cut. So I'm going to select my roll, edit. Now if I click on the edit, notice here both sides of the edit, both the video and the audio portion of the edit get selected as well, even though they're asymmetrical. I'm going to hit Shift Control A to deselect that. I'm going to hit Alt and grab only my audio portion of the edit and drag that to the right. And now if I play my edit back, my video edit happens before my audio edit. And this is called an L cut, because if you look at the shape of the clips, it looks like it's forming an L. This is where you lead by the video switching prior to the audio. The whole point of an L cut or a J cut is to anticipate or lead your audience into the next scene, either via the audio or via the video. Either you switch the video first and then you're dragging the audience along from one audio environment into a next audio environment, or you lead or anticipate the video edit by cutting the audio first and then leading your audience into the video edit. So those are two simple techniques that can add a little bit more dynamic flair to your edit. So don't always think you have to cut up and down your video and your audio at the same time. This is also a very good way to get rid of jump cuts. So go ahead and open lesson 11. And in lesson 11, you're going to find in the project panel several sequences. And each one of these sequences deals with cleaning up audio or trying to improve audio in, according to different circumstances in these different sequences. And what that's called, typically in the video post-production world, is called sweetening audio or audio sweetening. In other words, we're trying to make the audio sound better. So let's go ahead and save lesson 11 as a work in progress, just so we don't copy it on top of itself. Work in progress 1, I'll go ahead and save that. And make sure that you have 01 effects open in your timeline. That's the first sequence.
Looking for the ideal gift idea.
This has
and
basically
don't pass up this opportunity.
A couple of different audio clips in it. I'll just sort of go to my timeline. Here's music.
The importance of recording.
More dialogue. Music. And more music. In our Essential Sound panel, over here where the effects panel is, we've got two tabs. One is the Edit tab and one is the Browse tab. Now the Browse tab we already saw before. That allows us to play.
Don't pass up this opportunity. Today and today only. Be the first in your block.
To preview some Adobe stock music. And remember, with timeline sync turned on, it'll play this music underneath or mix them with the clips that are already in the timeline. And since our first clip is a dialogue clip, it just put that music underneath the dialogue clip. And the Essential Sound panel, the other tab is the Edit tab. And the Edit tab is where we're going to be doing our work now, mostly. Now, in the Edit tab, nothing is activated until you select a clip in the timeline. So in the timeline, we're going to select the first clip here. And notice that now we have 4 options: dialogue, music, sound effects, and ambience. So the way this works in the Essential Sound, the Essential Sound panel is kind of like a shortcut to using a bunch of filters onto your audio. So instead of going to get each filter separately, this bundles filters into useful groups and sort of does some of the presets for you. As a matter of fact, you can see right here, there's a box called Preset, and if you go drop down, you can see each category, dialogue, music, sound effect, ambience, has a number of presets. So you can go right off the bat and just set a preset dialogue and just put balanced male voice, and that will automatically throw on a bunch of filters to this first clip. But we're going to do it in a little bit of a different manner. So right here at the top is the name of our clip. Add cliches. It's in mono. It's a WAV file, which is a type of audio file. So right here we can see what is the name of our clip that we're actually working with. Like I said, there's presets underneath, and down here there's options, categories to select. We're going to select the dialogue category since this is a dialogue clip. And inside this dialogue category, there are options, more options. There's loudness, and each one is collapsible. Repair, clarity, and creative. And of course, you have the presets that you can select right off the bat. If we selected, say, podcast voice preset, notice that nothing else happened here. But if we go to our add cliches clip in the timeline, and let's say double click it and load it into the source panel and go to effects control, look at what we have in the effects control panel. We have a bunch of filters that have been applied automatically. A vocal enhancer, a graphic EQ, a dynamics processor, a FFT filter, and a de-esser. They have all been applied as part of this preset podcast voice. So let's go ahead and listen to it. In the effects sequence, I'm going to just quickly hit X, and I'm going to turn on my loop playback just in case we want to play it back several times, and hit play.
Today and today only. Be the first in your block. Time is running out. You could be a winner. This is a once-in-a-lifetime sale-orama. Offer expires when it suits us. Limited to stock on hand. Looking for the ideal gift idea? Then don't pass up this opportunity.
It sounds pretty good. And that is a podcast voice preset. Okay? So let's go ahead. I'm going to hit Alt-click to collapse all these filters. I can't delete them all at once, so I'll just delete them one at a time. Yeah, that's because the effects volume is always going to be on. So I deleted all the effects. Now let's listen to it without the effects.
Gift idea? Then don't pass up this opportunity. Today and today only. Be the first in your block. Time is running out. You could be a winner.
It sounds a little bit thinner, you see. Also, I've got my static peaks. I'm going to right click on this and turn dynamic peaks on. And let's go ahead and apply this podcast voice preset again to this clip. Note all the filters get dropped back in.
This is a
And if I play
once-in-a-lifetime
back,
sale-orama. Offer expires when it suits us. Limited to stock on hand. Looking for the ideal gift idea? Then don't pass up this opportunity.
you see how the volume is much more present? Well, that is because it has added all these filters. So that is sort of the advantage of working in Essential Sound. There's a lot of presets. There's a lot of ways to activate a group of filters automatically. And right here, do you see the clip volume? I'm looking at this clip and I'm going,
time is running
it's hitting, it's a little bit above -6, which is a little hot. So all I have to do here, I already set my podcast voice preset. I'm going to hit the clip volume level, and I'm going to drag this down by, say, 2 dBs right here.
You could.
And now if I play it back,
this is a once-in-a-lifetime sale-orama. Offer
perfect.
expires when it suits us.
Look at my
Limited to
level.
stock on hand.
Exactly between -12 and -6.
Don't pass up this opportunity. Today
and note, it added another filter, which is called the hard limiter. So without having to know what all these different filters do, you can just get a preset, drop it on there. You can adjust the clip volume right here and clean up or sweeten the audio in this first clip. Remember, you select the clip, you select the category, and then you could select a preset to drop it on. Now, if you wanted to, you could go into each one of these filters, vocal enhancer, hit edit, and go in here and start messing around with this actual filter. And, you know, it also has presets in it. So you could explore some of these presets. Obviously, there's a graphics EQ. And look, there's a graph that's been applied. They've boosted the 250 and the 4K a little bit for some more vocal presence, et cetera, et cetera. You could go in there and explore. This is actually a good way to get to learn how these filters work by putting on a preset and then going to see what the preset has actually done. Let's select another clip in the effects sequence. Let's put our playhead over the second clip and go ahead and hit X. So in the effects sequence, we're now going to play back the second clip, which is music. If you look at the levels are kind of low. They're between 24 and 18. So let's make sure this clip is selected. And in our Essential Sound panel, let's select the music category. Notice it's all dynamic. The music can keep playing, which is why I put the loop playback on. Now, let's take a look at the presets. Balanced background music, ducking, we saw that, we'll look at that again. Remix. We're not going to use any of these, but what we are going to use, you see there's a couple of different options. We're going to use loudness. So I'm going to stop the playback. I'm going to hit auto match. And now the loudness has been set. Right off the bat, we can hear that it's a little bit louder. That loudness has been set to an acceptable broadcast level, which is between -18 and -12. But let's say we might want it to be a little bit louder. We could go to the clip level, and let's boost it up by 2 dB. And now let's listen to it. See, it's getting a lot closer to the -12 there. Which is pretty good. I might actually boost it a little bit more. If we don't have any dialogue on top of this, if this is just, say, a music track behind some graphics, see how I dynamically raised the level there to 4, plus 4 dBs? And now I'm hitting at minus 12, which is perfect. Now, this audio, notice it added a hard limiter to the clip. The loudness filter was applied directly to the audio waveform. It doesn't come in as a filter. It just does a calculation in the background to boost the loudness. But let's just say I still feel that this is a bit dry. And that is because the music is in mono. Look at the name of the clip. It's called Music Mono, which is not a bad thing. But let's just say I want to add a little bit of excitement to this music. I can go to my effects, and here we're going to step out of the Essential Sound panel, and we're going to go to the Audio Effects tab, and I'm going to go get something called Reverb. And I'm just going to throw on convolution reverb. Notice it added a filter. If I hit edit, it's going to show me a bunch of parameters. Don't get intimidated. Just, we'll adjust them as we're playing back. Now you can hear the sound is different. It sounds like he's playing in a room. Also, the volume has been boosted a little bit. Now, inside this reverb filter, we've also got a bunch of different presets. Let's try Smoky Bar. Sounds great. So I'm going to stop it. But notice, actually, I am going to turn my static peaks back on just to show you. Okay, see where it's hitting? It's hitting between -6 and -0. That's a bit hot. Hot means it's a little bit too high. The levels are too high. So what I'm going to do now is I've got these two filters stacked on top of each other. I've got the limiter and then the reverb. Actually, and preferably, you'd want the limiter to be the last filter in the chain. This is called a chain of filters. So I'm going to take the hard limiter and I'm going to put it last, first of all. Then I'm going to go back to my essential sound. Remember, my hard limiter corresponds to this clip volume level. So now if I play back my clip, remember I had added 4 dB? I'm going to take those 4 dBs off. I'm going to hit 0. Notice how my sound is gone down now? Now, remember, when you've got static peaks on, if you click in the Vue meter, the static peaks go away. Now my volume's hitting at -6, which is almost perfect. I'm going to go down -1 dB, -1.5 dB, just to show you that you can actually do that. I'm going to click in my Vue meters, and let's play this track down one more time. And now this is perfect. Perfect levels. It's hitting at between -12 and -6 perfectly. I've got a nice little reverb on it, so it sounds kind of dynamic. Here's without the reverb. Here's with the reverb. So, I did a combination of things here. I went into my essential sound. I did not get a preset, but I did apply loudness, and then I applied clip volume, which is basically a hard limiter to this clip. And then I went into my effects control panel, and I went to get a reverb, which is a standalone effect, and I applied it also to that clip. So then I rearranged the order of my filters here, and then I readjusted the loudness or the overall clip volume. So that's how you can combine presets and side essential sound with standalone effects. Let's go listen to another clip. Let's get this third clip.
The importance of recording audio without the distraction of background noise cannot be overstated.
Okay, so the reason why this clip is talking about background noise is simply because if you listen to the beginning of this clip, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit on my timeline. If we listen to this beginning part, and I'm going to put an O point here, and I'm going to play it back as a loop. You hear that hiss? That is called the noise floor, or background noise, or room tone. All these terms sort of apply to the same thing. And that is the background noise that we want to get rid of. So in this case, we're going to get a standalone filter. We're not going to work in essential sound, although we could. But we're going to do it two ways. First, we're going to go into effects, and we're going to get a filter called Denoise. And with my clip selected, remember, the clip selected right now is that mono music track. I'm going to select this clip, which is the noisy audio, and I'm going to double click on Denoise to apply that filter. You see in my effects control panel. And now I'm going to turn on my edit panel, and I'm going to play this back.
Recording audio without the distraction of background noise cannot be overstated. If you have the presence of lots of
now we can't hear the noise anymore because the filter is being applied. And it's being applied at 40%. And if I want to hear just the noise, I can click on this. And I can hear that not only is the noise being clipped out, but also some of his speech. So it's typically not what I want. I don't want to clip any of his speech. I really just want to clip the noise out. So I'm going to take this slider. If I take this slider all the way down to 0.
Audio without the distraction of background noise cannot be overstated. If you have the presence of lots of background,
you're still going to hear the noise. So let's bring it up to, say, 20% or the second notch.
It can get in the way of the viewer understanding the audio.
That sounds very clean. If I listen to the output noise, very little has been clipped out. So that's probably where I'd leave it, between 10% and 20%. And now on our clip, oops, I forgot to turn this off. Output noise only.
If you have the presence of lots of background sound, it can get in the way of the viewer understanding the audio and reduces.
My audio is a little bit hot. It does hit up above 6 here.
The importance of recording audio
at times
without the distraction of background noise.
So this is a case where what I would do, because of all the peaks and valleys here, if I double click on this clip, you can see there's a lot of peaks and valleys. Remember, you can make these taller to just see them like this. There's a lot of peaks and valleys here. So a couple of things that you could do, but one of the things I would probably do is just normalize it. A right click, go audio gain, normalize max peak to -6 dB. And now if I play it back,
if you have the presence of lots of background sound, it can get in the way of the viewer understanding the audio and reduces overall comprehension.
I'm going to let it play through the whole clip so we can see what happens.
The importance of recording audio without the distraction of background noise cannot be overstated. If you have the presence of lots of background.
My peak is right between -12 and -6, which is good. And that's this peak right here. You can see it. If I could zoom in. You see that peak, which corresponds to this. Now, notice, if I play it in the source,
without the distraction of background noise.
look how high it's going. It's going all the way up almost to 0. But what you want to pay attention to is what's happening in the sequence. You see, the sequence is much tamer because I've applied the filters. Remember, this is the source, this is the instance. So this is my peak, and my peak is falling right where it should. However, I still have another issue, whereas it's not immediately apparent, but
if you have the presence of
it seems like as he's talking, it modulates a lot. There's a lot of low, soft sounds, and then a lot of sort of loud sounds. And if you take a look at the Vue meter,
understanding the audio,
the Vue meter, you see that black line? It goes all the way down to way down here. This is called the valley.
The importance of recording audio without the distraction of background noise.
And the peak is all the way up here.
If you have
so the difference between the valley and the peak is sometimes too steep, and in this particular case it is. So I'm going to fix that by going to I'm going to clear out my search panel here. I'm going to go into my audio effects, and I'm going to get a amplitude and compression folder. I'm going to get my dynamics filter. I'm going to drop that in here. Go to my effects control panel, and I'm going to open my dynamics filter. Inside my dynamics filter, I've got
lots of background,
a gate, compressor, an expander, and a limiter. Now, we remember the limiter. We already used that before. That's when you boost your levels, but you don't want them to clip over a certain amount. What we're going to do is we're going to turn on the compressor and the limiter. And let's work with the compressor first.
Get in the way
now,
of the viewer understanding the audio.
Nothing's happening right now.
Overall comprehension.
That's because the ratio is at 1, which means the compressor is not being applied. The ratio needs to be at least at 2.
Background noise cannot be overstated.
Now you can see it's starting to actually activate.
Get in the way of the viewer understanding the audio and reduces overall comprehension.
The threshold is where the compressor cuts off. So we're just going to leave it at minus 20 dB. It's pretty much okay. But what we're going to do here, we're not going to touch the attack or the release. They're pretty much standard. You can leave them at that. What we're going to do, though, is boost up the makeup.
The importance of recording audio without the distraction of background noise cannot be overstated. If you have the presence of lots of background
I want my
sound,
levels to hit between minus 6 and minus 12.
The viewer understanding the audio and
if you
reduces
notice,
overall comprehension. The importance of
while
recording audio
the actor's
without the
talking,
distraction of background
my
noise
valleys
cannot
don't
be
go as low
overstated.
anymore.
If you have the presence of lots of background sound, it can get in the way.
I can play around with my threshold a little bit.
And reduces overall comprehension. The importance of
If I drag my threshold all the way over here,
background noise cannot be overstated.
I'm compressing a lot more, but because I'm compressing a lot, the volume has been taken down. So I can make this up by boosting this level.
The importance of recording audio without the distraction of background noise cannot be overstated. If you have
But that's
the presence of
probably
lots
a
of
little bit
background
too
sound,
much,
it can get in the way
because
of the
we're starting to hear the
understanding
noise
the audio
again
and
of the
reduces
room.
overall
So
comprehension.
it's probably better to be somewhere in the minus 26
The
range.
importance of recording audio
And then we'll
without
drag
the
this
distraction of
volume back
background
down.
noise cannot be overstated. If you have the presence of lots of background sound, it can get in the way of the viewer understanding the audio.
And now I'm
reduces
right around
overall
here
comprehension.
between minus 6 and minus 12, which is a good spot. My
The importance
limiter,
of
I'm going to put
recording
my
audio
limiter,
without the distraction of background noise cannot be overstated. If you have the presence of lots of background sound, it can get in the way of the viewer understanding the audio and reduces overall comprehension.
at minus 3 dB.
The importance of recording audio without
I'm
the
not really
distraction of
having very
background noise
many
cannot be
problems with my
overstated.
peaks here, so
If you have the presence of lots
I don't
of
need to worry
background
about it
sound,
too much.
it can get in the way of the viewer understanding the audio and reduces overall comprehension.
So now let's go back to look at my filter chain. I've got a denoise filter and a dynamics filter. Let's take a listen with and without the filters. Okay, here's with the filters.
The importance of recording audio without the distraction of background noise cannot be overstated.
Now I'm going to turn off the dynamics.
If you have the presence of lots of background sound, it can get in the way of the viewer understanding the audio.
You see how my dynamics, I compressed the sound and I made it more present, louder. That's what the compressor will
The importance
do.
of recording audio without the distraction of background noise cannot.
Hear my denoise? That's the noise. With the denoise,
The importance
It's
of
gone.
recording audio without the distraction of background noise cannot be
with the
overstated.
denoise, without the
If you have the
denoise,
presence of lots of background
with the
sound, it
denoise.
can get in the way of the viewer understanding the audio.
So all I did here was apply two simple filters that I went to get in the effects control panel. I got a denoise to get rid of the hiss, shh, and I got a dynamics to tighten the sound. You're just kind of tightening the peaks and the valleys, and then taking that overall tightened sound and boosting it a little bit with the makeup. That's what I did here. I tightened the sound, ratio 2, threshold minus 26, and I boosted the makeup up to push the overall volume back up. So let's go get another sequence in project lesson 11. Let's double click on the sequence called Loudness. I'm gonna hit a backslash, hit a home,
I was searching for something.
and now we've got a
couldn't say
sequence
what it
where
was,
we
but-
have both music and dialogue.
Suffice to say,
Ooh, whoa. Did you see that clip? Wow, it's all the way up here, almost hitting 0. So obviously this sequence needs to be remixed. I'm going to just shrink this a little bit like this. This, I don't need to see the preview icons of the video because I'm just mixing the audio here. So we saw this third clip here,
suffice to say,
dialogue clip is quite hot. So we're going to need to mix this down. All right, so what we're going to do, instead of going in here and trying to mix every little clip one at a time, I'm going to grab all of them. And the way to do that is to go get my A tool. And remember, A is select all clips in track, but I'm going to hold the shift key down as I select only the clips in this track. Now I've got all these dialogue clips selected. I'm going to go to my Essential Sound panel now, and I'm going to hit Dialogue. So now all these clips have been categorized as dialogue clips. Now there's a couple of things we can do here. What I want to do first is I want to adjust the loudness, the overall loudness of all the clips, so that they are all kind of brought down to the same level. And we remember we did that before where we did an auto match. That's really the only option you have in the loudness panel. But I'm going to go ahead and hit auto match. And now hits auto match the loudness. Hopefully in my
I was searching
sequence.
for something.
Go ahead and play it back.
I couldn't say what it was, but suffice to say,
Perfect. Did you see what it just did? It took that third clip and it brought it down to match the other ones. And it brought everything down in a perfect range between minus 12 and minus 6 with the music
know
in the
what I said.
background.
I wanted to go to New York, but all that construction.
The only thing I would say about this mix is that, now I'm going to go back to my V tool. The only thing I would say about this mix is that you see the holes in between the clips? I would put room tone between those clips. That's just a professional tip. I would not leave that big, deep, empty space between the two clips. If you listen to the first gap between the two clips, listen to how the audio just kind of, it's up at this level, and then all of a sudden, boof.
I was searching for something. I couldn't say what it was, but
it kind of feels like, oh, it kind of feels empty. That's why I would put room tone there. Now, since we don't have room tone, what I am going to do here is I'm going to work on this music track, because this music track is kind of taking the place of room tone. It's kind of like an ambience music track. So let's select the music track now. I'm going to go to my Essential Sound panel, and I'm going to click on the music category, because this is a music clip. And now remember, this is called Ambient Heavens. It's right here. Okay. And I'm not going to select a preset, but what I am going to do is I'm going to do what is called ducking. So I'm going to go ahead and uncollapse the ducking option, and I'm going to click on the button that says ducking. And I'm going to duck this audio track against, you have 5 options: duck against dialogue, duck against music, duck against sound effects, duck against ambience, duck against another assigned audio type. Now, I'm not going to get into all these options, but you can imagine what they do. And what ducking does, it takes your audio clip and it'll fade it out and fade it back in. It'll fade it out and fade it back in relative to the other audio clip that you select. Now, so I am ducking it against whatever is selected as a dialogue clip. Now, since everything on track A1 has been selected as a dialogue clip, when I hit generate keyframes right here, watch what happened in the sequence. It's calculating, and bam, there you go. I'll make this a little bit taller so you can see it better. We have audio keyframe, audio automation keyframes now. Now if I hit home and play this back.
Something. I couldn't say what it was, but suffice to say,
and it almost sounds like somebody's in there just mixing the music up and down, which is what's happening, but it's just happening automatically. So I want to adjust that amount. So I'm going to go here to my duck amount, and I'm going to make the duck a little bit less obvious. And let's just say 3 dBs instead of the full Monty. And the duration speed is at 800 milliseconds. I'm going to make that a lot faster. Put it maybe at, I'll just click 200 milliseconds. And the sensitivity means how much you duck by. Well, it means, actually the sensitivity is how much it's reacting to the dialogue clip. So I'm going to reduce that to 4. Now I'm going to go ahead and regenerate new keyframes. Watch these keyframes as I generate new ones. There you go. The levels have been adjusted. Now if I play it back.
I couldn't say what it was, but suffice to say, I would know when I saw it. I wanted to go to New York, but all that construction, and then, all of a sudden, it found me.
So I would say that's great. My levels are falling between -6 and -12. My music doesn't sound like it's being janked up and down. It's very subtle. It pushes in and it fades out when she's talking. Except, I would say, probably right here. The second to last clip. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And I'm going to actually select this into out. Oh, because I have V1 turned on. I'm going to turn off all of these tracks and now hit. And now it's only got this portion selected. And I'm going to do a loop playback.
All of a sudden, all of a sudden, all of a sudden, all of a sudden, all of a sudden.
I'm going to expand this in to out a little bit to include the music track before and after it.
All of a sudden, all of a sudden, all of a sudden.
It just seems like there's a little bit of a dead space, and then she says, all of a sudden. So I'm going to work on this passage manually. Remember, these keyframe automation dots can be altered. So I'm going to go ahead and select my pen tool, just hit P, and I'm going to grab these 4 automation dots, and I'm going to select continue auto Bezier. So now that's added a little bit of a curve in here, and I'm going to zoom in a bit, and I'm going to just smoothen these out a little bit, this keyframe forward a bit, and drag this one over here, and kind of, I don't want to move this there. I just want to move this side. So I want to kind of smooth out this. It's very hard to see. I have to admit, this is why I do not like to do rubber banding inside my timeline, but for the purpose of showing you, I'm trying to do it here. Now, to be honest, a better way to do it would be to double click on this, go to my effects controls, and here are all my keyframes. So they're all here, individual parameters right here, and you can see the ones that I'm working on right now are these 4. So I can expand this here and try to do a bit of a better job in here. It's still not perfect, but I can sort of see them better here. Okay, so let's play this back.
All of a sudden. All of a sudden. All of a sudden. All of a sudden.
I think the fade happens a little bit too soon, so I'm going to pull this guy over. And this guy too. And I'm going to raise the bottom level up a little bit. Now if I play it back.
All of a sudden. All of a sudden. All of a sudden.
I think that's much smoother. Now, so you see I did a little bit of surgery here inside my effects control panel using my keyframes, individual parameters. This is an amplify filter that's been applied here, which is what they're using to do the ducking. So I was able to adjust that in my effects control panel. I tried to adjust it in the timeline. I don't like messing around with keyframes too much in my timeline. It's just not that convenient. So there you go. So now I think I have a better result. This passage seems a little bit smoother to me now.
All of a sudden. All of a sudden.
That is how you can adjust your mix inside your timeline using Essential Sound as a way to do some processes to your audio that are very quick and very easy to do. And all I needed to do is to do a simple adjustment. I didn't need to put in all these other keyframes. I just needed to adjust this one little passage instead of trying to go into this timeline and manually adjust the level on each one of these dialogue clips and then come down and create all these keyframes in my music clip. I just did that using Essential Sound, so that gave me a lot of really good options very quickly, and I just was able to go in there and tweak them a little bit, or what is called sweeten the sound. Let's go into the project panel and grab auto, noise, and reverb. And here we've got a sequence which has got several clips, but there's really one clip that I want to focus in on, and that's this second clip here. I'm going to position my playhead over it. I'm going to hit X. I'm going to turn on my loop playback, and I'm going to hit spacebar.
Welcome to the simulation. The what?
The ancestor simulation. 1,000 years ago, this is what it felt like to be human. Hello, how are you feeling?
So you might notice that it sounds kind of spacey. In other words, it sounds like she's in a big empty room. That's just because of the way it was mic'd. So we're going to try to fix that. Sometimes that happens. Your boom mic is not close enough or whatever the case may be. So we're going to try to see if we can fix that. So first we're going to select the clip, right? And it looks like it already selected it as a dialogue clip. Well, let's just say we don't want whatever presets were applied to that to be applied. Well, you can hit clear audio type if you want to do that. Let's just say you want to start over. Hit clear audio type. So now this gives us the option to go ahead and start over. So we're going to reselect it as a dialogue clip. We're not going to work on the loudness. We don't need that. What we are going to work on is repair. And look in the repair drop-down menu. We've got reduce noise, reduce rumble, DeHum, DS, and reduce reverb. You can try all these different ones. A very, very convenient one is DeHum, and we might look at that in a minute. But right now, we're going to try to reduce that echoiness in her voice by turning on reduce reverb. So we're just going to turn that on, and the amount is 5. Let's play it back.
Excellent. That's perfectly normal. Welcome to the simulation.
The what?
The ancestor simulation. 1,000 years ago, this is what it felt like to be human. Hello, how are you feeling?
It sounds a lot tighter. If I go to my FX control panel, you can see that there has been a De-Reverb filter applied. And the De-Reverb also has its own set of presets. Heavy reverb reduction, light reverb reduction, and a fader.
A little confused.
Excellent. That's perfectly normal. Welcome.
So these two graphs, where they intersect, is where the algorithm has detected a reverb. So it is going to eliminate this reverb. And it's set at 50% right now. And, well, I don't know, it sounds pretty good. Let's drag it down to, say, 30%.
Simulation.
The what?
The ancestor simulation. 1,000 years ago, this is what it felt like to be human.
Maybe I'd bring it back up to 40.
Hello, how are you feeling?
A little
Sounds okay. Now, I'm going to play it back and
Excellent. That's
show you what it
perfect.
sounds like with and
Welcome
without.
to the simulation.
The what?
This
The
is
ancestor
with.
simulation. 1,000 years ago, this is what it felt like to be human. Hello.
This is
How
without.
are you feeling?
A little.
I'm going to just focus on that hello, how are you feeling? I'm going to bring in my out point to here. And let's play this.
Hello. How are you feeling? Hello. How are you feeling?
That's
Hello.
with the
How are you
effect,
feeling?
without.
Hello. How are you feeling? Hello. How are you feeling? Hello.
With.
How are you feeling? Hello. How are you feeling?
Now, I am at 3.9 reduced reverb here. If I turn it on and let's put it all the way up to 8, what does that do?
Hello. How are you feeling? Hello. How are you feeling?
You see how it's clipping it?
How are you feeling? Hello.
The end of her words are getting clipped off.
Hello. How are you feeling?
So I'm bringing the slider down.
How are you feeling? Hello. How are you feeling? Hello. How are you feeling? Hello. How are you?
So 5's pretty good.
Are you
4.6.
Hello. How are you feeling?
I would say that's pretty good. So that's a De-Reverb filter that's been applied using my Essential Sound panel and going to get a De-Reverb filter. Sometimes that filter can be useful. Let's go get sequence number 3, noise reduction. And if I play this down, you can hear there's a low level hum.
I would know when I saw it.
Now clearly this has been added just to show this particular effect. But this type of low level hum happens sometimes if you're shooting and there's a lot of electrical devices that are plugged in, and you're basically getting line noise, electrical line noise, which is essentially the noise of your electrical power current. So we're going to select this clip. I'm going to clear audio type, and I'm going to select it as a dialog clip. And what I want to do is I want to go into my repair drop-down menu, and I want to select this DeHum filter. Now the DeHum filter, this is really specifically for electrical noise, like a big hum like we've got here. Select my timeline, hit X.
Construction. I wanted to go to New York,
really
but
hear
you
it
know,
there.
all that construction. I wanted to go to New York, but you know, all that
So
construction.
I'm going to turn on the
wanted
DeHum,
to go to
and
New
there's
York,
two
but, you
options.
know,
One's
all that
50 hertz,
construction.
one's 60 hertz. That's because depending on where you live in the world, that corresponds to the cycles of your electrical current. In the USA, 60 hertz, and the UK, 50 hertz. This also has to do with our video frame rate. In the USA, typically our frame rates are 60 frames per second or 30 frames per second, which is a half of 60. In the UK, the frame rates are 50 frames per second or 24 frames per second, which is almost half of 50. So here in America, I'm going to set it at 60 hertz. I'm going to turn on DeHum. The slider went to 7.1. We're going to take a look. Let's see what that sounds like.
I wanted to go to New York, but
It's
you know,
definitely
all
got
that
rid of the hum.
construction. I wanted to go to New York, but you know, all that construction. I
Without,
wanted to go to New York, but you know, all that construction. I wanted to go to New York, but
With?
you know, all that construction. I wanted to go to New York, but you know, all that construction.
so it's probably good, but
I
I'd
wanted to go to
probably
New
bring it
York,
down to
but you know.
6, just because it is kind of clipping her voice a bit.
No, all that construction. I wanted to go to New York, but you know, all that
If I click in my Vue meter,
I wanted to go to New
I can
York,
see
but
her
you know,
level
all
is
that
hitting
construction. I
at
wanted to go
minus
to New
18
York,
now.
But, you know, all that construction. I wanted to
So
go
what
to
I
New
would do
York, but,
here
you
now
know, all that construction.
is I've got the DeHum, so I got rid of my noise. That's good. I'm going to go to my timeline. I'm going to do Shift Control X to get rid of my in to outs. And I'm going to apply loudness now. I'm going to turn on auto match. That's going to auto match the loudness of my entire audio clip.
And then, all of a sudden, it found
You
me.
see it's still hitting at minus
I was
18.
searching for something. I couldn't see
So
what it
now
was,
I can go down to here
suffice
to my
say.
clip level, and I can raise this, let's say, by 4 dBs. I'll just type in 4. And now let's see how that sounds. Where it's my level right here is minus 18. Let's see where it lands.
I would know when I saw it. I wanted to go to New York, but you know, all that construction. And then, all of a sudden, it found me. I was searching for something. I couldn't say what it was, but suffice to say, I would know when
Well,
I saw it.
it's raised the level, but you already also noticed that there's a little bit of a noise at the beginning there. So I don't want to raise the level too much here. Actually, I'm going to take it back down to 2. And instead, I'm going to right-click on this, and I'm going to adjust the gain. I'm going to adjust the gain by 5 dBs. And now let's take a listen.
Something. I couldn't say what it was, but suffice to say, I would know when I saw it. I wanted to go to New York, but you know, all that construction. And then, all of a sudden, it found me.
So by raising the gain, I was able to raise the level to where I want it between -6 and -12. But I still have that little punch. There's a little sound there.
I couldn't say what it was, but suffice to say, I would know when I saw it. I wanted to go to New York, but you know, all that construction. And then, all of a sudden, it found me. I
You
was
hear
so-
that? Punk. So, here's a tip. In order to get rid of that, I'm going to go to my effects drop-down menu. I'm going to go to audio transitions. I'm going to open crossfade, and my default audio transition is constant power. I'm going to take my constant power crossfade. I'm going to drop it to the end of this clip right here, and I'm going to drop it to the beginning of the clip as well. And in fact, if I had several clips, I'd drop this constant power fade on every single edit. Now let's take a listen.
searching for something. I couldn't say what it was, but suffice to say, I would know when I saw it. I wanted to go to New York, but you know, all that construction. And then, all of a sudden, it found me. I was searching for something.
Bingo. Got rid of my punch. So it's always a good rule of thumb. Now, of course, this is a time-consuming thing, but you can select all your clips in your sequence using your A tool and drop down the constant power fade, crossfade on every single edit. That will get rid of any little pops and any little cuts, digital cuts like that, like we had in this particular clip. So there you go. There are some tips. I use both my essential sound panel to clean up the hum, add some loudness, adjust the clip level by 2 dBs. I even added some gain, and I went to get my crossfade and added a crossfade at the beginning, at the end. If I zoom in here to the beginning of my sequence, you can see there's my crossfade right here. If I double click on it, it's 3 frames long. Now I set that default duration at 3 frames long. You can set the default duration in your preferences, and my timeline, audio transition default duration, 3 frames. And I usually set it at 3 frames. That way I can just take that one crossfade and drop it on all my edits. And I know that my edits will not have those little pops in them. So in the Essential Sound panel, in this noise reduction sequence, we did some work on this clip. In the dialogue option, we repaired the DeHum, remember, and we adjusted the level. Let's just say, and we also, I think, did we adjust the loudness? I can't remember. Let's just say that I have several other clips that have the same problem. I'm going to need to do the same thing to them. I can save this as a preset by going here to this little icon, Save Settings as a preset, and I could save my preset to Beau's DeHum preset. Hit OK, and now my preset is available to me in my dialogue category. My Beau's DeHum preset is going to be there. Of course, I can also get rid of it by hitting the trash. Do you want to get rid of the Beau's DeHum preset? I'm going to hit yes. I don't really need that preset, but that's just to show you. You can save a preset. If you spend some time working on a preset, that's a good idea. I want to show you something else, and I'm going to have to go get another project in order to show that. So I'm going to go ahead and open another project. Remember, I've got lesson 11 open. I'm going to go ahead and open lesson 10, the original lesson 10. And really what I wanted to show you is this theft unexpected.
Is this seat taken?
Sequence. So in this theft unexpected sequence, notice that I'm going to hit a backslash and I'm going to hit a zoom a little bit. Now, with my V tool, if I click on the first clip here, remember we saw this is an L cut. The audio for these 3 clips, 1, 2, 3, comes from my first clip in the sequence. I'm gonna give you this clip a different label so we can really see it, make it pink. There you go. Excuse Me 05 is the clip that we're getting our audio from, right? Now let's just say you were editing and you did this. Somehow you got rid of this portion of the clip for whatever reason. And you were like, oh, I have the audio.
Is this seat taken?
Remember where the clink is? So here's my clink right here. Let's say I need to find that piece of video. I don't know where it went. Well, is there a very quick way to do that? You can just select the clip with your playhead positioned exactly on that clink right there. All you need to do is hit F. Boy, was that quick. And it loaded, excuse me, the clip at exactly that same position. Now, of course, it loaded the audio portion of the clip, but this clip also has video. All I need to do is click on this icon to reveal the video. And now if I want to drop this back down into this position here, well, what I need to do is a little maneuver that I'm going to show you. I'm going to deselect all my blue track routings. And I'm going to make sure I select only the V1 track routing. Okay? Now I'm going to hit X. X selects this gap into out. All right? So, and now I'm going to select V1. So what I'm telling Premiere Pro to do now, I have noticed, this is very important, I have neither moved my playhead in the timeline nor in the source clip. Very important to not move the playhead because the F, which is called match frame, matches exactly the 2 playhead positions. So you don't want to move the playhead. So that playhead is exactly where I want it in relation to this clip. And now I'm going to do an overwrite and it should drop that video of that clip right here. I'm going to ignore the endpoint, the source endpoint, because I just want to match up the 2 playheads, and I'm going to hit OK. So now if I play this clip back again, no, I need to go back 1 frame, hit X, play this back.
Is this seat taken? Is this seat taken? Is this seat taken?
So now I've matched the video back into where the audio came from. The audio, the clinking of the cup comes from this clip. And you can see it happens right here. And I was able to match it right back into my sequence using the F tool. F is called match frame. It allows you to match a video frame to its source. So if I go anywhere in the sequence here, let's say this clip here, I'll zoom into this clip now. This HS suit, I'm going to go ahead and give this one another color, I don't know, green. This HS suit, I'm missing the audio for this HS suit. Right now I've got an L cut where the audio from Excuse Me is playing underneath the HS suit. Let's just say I wanted to match back into the original audio for this HS suit. I'm going to hit X. And I'm going to hit F. Notice it loads the clip and my source. And this time I'm going to route, I've already got my in and my out points selected and my theft unexpected here. I'm going to route my audio tracks and disconnect my video tracks. And I'm going to drop my audio in. So you can see it's brought in the audio that corresponds to this clip. And note, it matches the color because it's from the same clip. And it's brought in the newspaper sound back underneath this clip. So F is called match frame, very important tool to match your video frame to an audio frame or your audio frame to a video frame from your timeline back into your source so you can backtrack and you can bring it back in. But remember, when you do F, once you do F, you don't want to move the playheads either in the source or the timeline because they're perfectly synced at that point. All you want to do is put an in point and out point and drop your clip back in. Okay, so now we're going to go get sequence number 7. Okay, that's obviously a music track. And what we're going to look at now is something called EQ, which stands for equalizing. We already spoke about the different bands of frequencies from the low end to the high end. And what Equalizer allows us to do is to alter the level of those bands discretely without altering the overall level of the track all at once, but just focusing in on one narrow band. So there are several ways to do this. So I'm going to go to my effects panel, and I'm going to look at audio effects. And right here in the filter and EQ drop-down menu, there's several different types of EQ. There's graphic equalizer, which is what EQ stands for. And then there's parametric equalizer. There's another parametric equalizer here. I'm going to open up the graphics equalizer. I've got my clip selected. I'm just double click on it. And go to my effects control panel. Whoops, where is it? Select my clip, double click on it. My effects control panel, open up my equalizer. So here is my graphic equalizer. And my graphic equalizer allows me to adjust these different bandwidths. These are different areas of the audio. From 31 Hertz to say 500 Hertz is the low end. From 500 to 4K is the mid-range, which is where the human voice is. And from 4K up to 16K is the high end, where the treble, the high, super high end is. So you also have defaults, presets that you can try out. So let's go ahead and we're playing back this clip. We'll go ahead and look at a if I go low fidelity, you can see it's trimmed off some of the low end and some of the high end. Or I can try musical presence. Without, with. It clears up the sound a little bit. Musical presence is not a bad one. This is what a high pass does. It cuts all the low end off. Here's what a low pass does. It cuts all the high end off. Here's a vocal presence. Without. It brings the presence in because you can see it added a little bit in the 2K range. So, as this is playing back, we can start to do a couple of things to this clip. First thing I would do is, right off the bat, is chop off anything below 30 Hertz. We really don't need that. And even 60, I would chop some of it off. 16K, this is what 16K sounds like. You can't really hear it because it's way, way, way up in the high end. So I'm gonna chop that off too. Now 8K, you will hear it. And a good way to go about EQ is to first take everything down. And because we're dealing with human voices, I'm going to start bringing up the mids. One K's got a bad sound on it, so I'm gonna probably drop this down. This doesn't sound bad, except it's missing a little bit of that low end. So let's put some low end back in. Too much low end. Without, with. So you see, by adjusting our frequencies, we get a better frequency response, is what that is called. So I'm going to leave this, but of course, obviously, we know that our levels are hitting way too high here. So I would have to go in there and probably adjust the gain a little bit. But before I do that, I'm going to get rid of this graphic equalizer. And I'm going to go get the parametric equalizer and drop that on instead. Oh, not the simple one. Apologies. The complicated one. And the complicated one looks like this. So this is the same thing, except that now we have a spectrum analyzer. Here are the different bandwidths, 50, 40, 50, 200, 800, and then all the way to 18,000. So they're a little bit different, but you can change this. I can make that 250. Remember we had 250? We had this at 60. So I can adjust them any way I want. And what it does is it moves these little dots that you can then also adjust manually. This is the difference between a parametric EQ and a graphic EQ. So the parametric EQ now allows me to adjust these dots. And let's say I want to do some of the same stuff I did before. I want to chop this low end off. But notice that I've chopped up a big, large swath of it. Now I can change the shape of the curve by clicking on here, and that gives us a better response here. But what I really want to look at is what's called the Q. And the Q is the width, we'll turn that on, the width of the band. Anything below 32 has been chopped off, or tapered at least. And I could pull that in more if I wanted, but let's just leave it around here. And let's say I wanted to get rid of some of the ultra high end. If I boost the high end, we get a little bit too much sibilance. So I'm going to trim this down, and I'm going to do the same when I get like my little notch there. So I'm just kind of chopping off that high end. And now I'm going to go to this 3000 Hertz here. I'll move it in a little bit towards, which is more of a human area, human voice area. Now you hear it. If I turn it off, that's the difference. Without the boost, with the boost. So that's probably too much boost, but I just wanted to show you to push it. Without, with. That's probably too much. I'll probably bring it down to here. But what I might do is I might widen the band and see what happens when I widen the band. If I narrow the band, I'm really only boosting the 2300. But if I widen the band, I'm boosting that whole area. Now let's say that's pretty good, but let's say in here, you see how I've got peaks in here that maybe I don't want? So I'll put this button at about 300 Hertz, and I'm gonna bring it down. But that is too wide of a band, so I'm gonna shrink the cue by doing this. So now what I've created is a notch. Without, with. It's very subtle, but if I move it over here, it's going to take a little bit of that rumble away. Without the EQ, with. So that's a parametric EQ, kind of doing the same thing as I was doing with the graphic EQ, but I have a little bit more fine control over basically where the bands merge into each other. That is parametric EQ. I think that there's two ways to approach it, either with the graphic EQ, so you can just do the bands up and down, or with the spectrum, where you can blend the different bands a little bit better with each other. But that just illustrates some of the tools that you have within the audio effects panel and the essential sound panel to address some of the most common audio issues you're going to run into. And in combination with the browse panel where you can get Adobe stock, hopefully this is going to give you a lot of tools to basically bring in audio if you need audio, and also remix your audio and sweeten the audio to clean it up so that your mix is nicer. Remember, audio is very important to video. Bad audio will stand out and will make your edit suffer. So you really want to learn as much as you can about audio. There are a lot of really good videos online that you can look at. If you really want to get into audio, I would recommend perhaps taking an audio production class or an audio mixing class, which would teach you a lot more of this kind of stuff, especially things about harmonics, things about frequency responses, and et cetera, and how to go in there and basically carve out your audio so it sounds better. But with these tools inside the Essential Sound panel, you've already got a lot of tools that you can use to very quickly get to a good spot with your audio, and hopefully that helps. And that is it for lesson E, and I will see you in the next lesson.